The wedding invitation arrived in a gold envelope so thick it felt like it carried judgment inside. I almost didn't open it, but my 8-year-old daughter, Lily, ran to the mailbox that afternoon, waving it like a prize. "Daddy! It's from Mommy." Her smile cracked something inside my chest. I stood there in our tiny apartment kitchen, paint peeling near the ceiling, bills stacked neatly beside the toaster, and stared at the embossed letters, "You are cordially invited." I knew what this was. Clara never did anything without a reason, and it wasn't forgiveness. It was a performance. When Clara left 3 years ago, she didn't just leave me. She left the version of me she thought would never amount to anything. I was working 2 jobs back then, a warehouse shift at dawn and cleaning office buildings at night. I was tired, always smelling like disinfectant or cardboard dust. Clara wanted more. Fancier restaurants. A bigger house. Friends who didn't ask about overdue payments. She met Daniel at one of those networking parties I was too exhausted to attend. Daniel with his tailored suits and his smooth voice. Daniel who owned half the real estate downtown. When she told me she was leaving, she didn't cry. She said, "I can't keep living like this. I deserve stability." Stability.as if I hadn't been breaking my back trying to build it. But what hurt most wasn't losing her. It was watching Lily stand at the door that night asking, "Mommy, are you coming back tomorrow?" Clara kissed her forehead and said, "Soon." Soon turned into weekends, then every other weekend, then whenever it was convenient. The divorce was quick. Clean. Clinical. She remarried her ambition long before she remarried Daniel. I didn't fight for the house. I didn't fight for furniture. I only fought for Lily, and I won full custody, because while Clara was climbing ladders, I was learning how to braid hair, pack lunches, and sit through second-grade math homework with patience I didn't know I had. Being a single dad isn't something they prepare you for. You learn how to comfort a crying child at 2 a.m. when she misses her mother. You learn how to say, "We can't afford that right now," in a tone that doesn't sound like failure. You learn how to swallow pride when other parents look at you with sympathy, but most of all, you learn that love is louder than embarrassment. So when that wedding invitation arrived, I knew what it meant. Clara wanted me there, not as a guest. As proof that she had leveled up. Proof that she had escaped the struggling husband. Proof that she had won. 2 days later, she called. "I hope you'll come," she said casually. It would mean a lot to Lily to see her parents getting along. I almost laughed. "You really want me there?" I asked. There was a pause. "I just think it's important people see we're mature." Mature, that was Clara's word for humiliation. With a smile. The week before the wedding, Lily asked me, "Daddy, are you going?" I was tying her shoelaces when she said it. "I don't know," I replied. She hesitated. "Mommy said it's going to be really big. Like a princess wedding." I could imagine it already. The Grand Hotel ballroom. Crystal chandeliers. A guest list full of executives and investors. I pictured myself in my only suit, the one I wore to court 3 years ago. The thought burned, but Lily's eyes weren't filled with judgment, they were hopeful. "I want you there," she whispered. "I don't want to sit alone." That was it, not pride. Naughty go.my daughter, "I'll be there," I said. 3 days before the wedding, everything changed. I was cleaning an office late at night. One of those high-rise buildings with glass walls overlooking the city. The cleaning crew was short-staffed, so I was covering extra floors. Around 10 p.m., I found an elderly man sitting alone in a dark conference room. He looked lost. "Sir? We're closing up." He blinked slowly, confused. "Is the board meeting over?" There was no board meeting. I gently helped him to the lobby. He seemed disoriented. I asked if he had family to call. He gave me a name, Thomas Hale. I didn't recognize it, but the receptionist, who was still there, gasped, "You don't know who that is?" I didn't. Thomas Hale was the founder of Hale Technologies, a company worth billions, and I had just found him wandering alone in his own building. He had early-stage dementia, I later learned. His assistant had left early, assuming he'd already gone home. I stayed with him until his son arrived. That night, as they were leaving, Thomas gripped my hand. "You're a good man," he said softly. I shrugged. "Just doing my job." "No," he insisted. "Most people don't see others anymore." I didn't think much of it until the next morning. A black car was parked outside my apartment. A man in a suit knocked on my door. Mr. Hale wanted to see me. I almost didn't go. I didn't own anything that looked boardroom appropriate. But I went anyway. Thomas greeted me like an old friend. He remembered me, and over coffee in his massive office, he asked about my life. For some reason, I told him everything about Clara, about Lily, about the wedding. He listened, really listened, then he smiled. Would you do me a favor? He asked. I hesitated. Depends. Be my guest at a wedding this weekend. I blinked. What? He chuckled. I've been invited. Business connection. Daniel is one of our partners. Of course he was. Thomas leaned forward. Come with me. As my personal guest. I stared at him. Why? Because you remind me of the man I used to be before I forgot what mattered. The day of the wedding, I stood in front of my mirror wearing a tailored suit Thomas insisted on buying me. I barely recognized myself, but this wasn't about revenge. It was about dignity. When we arrived at the hotel, heads turned, not because of me, because of him. Thomas Hale didn't attend events casually. Clara's smile faltered when she saw us. Daniel rushed over immediately, all charm and handshakes. Mr. Hale. What an honor. Thomas nodded politely. And this, he said, placing a hand on my shoulder, is my friend. Friend, the word landed like thunder. Clara's eyes widened. Ethan, she whispered. I met her gaze calmly. Congratulations, I said. No bitterness. No sarcasm, just peace. Throughout the evening, people approached our table, investors, CEOs, influential names I'd only seen in business magazines. They asked my opinion, they laughed at my stories about Lily, they listened when I spoke. Clara watched from across the room, her perfect smile tightening at the edges. At one point, she pulled me aside. How did this happen? She demanded quietly. I shrugged. I showed up. She searched my face for anger, for resentment, for some sign that I was there to prove something, but the truth? I wasn't there for her anymore. I was there for Lily. And when she ran into my arms during the reception, shouting, Daddy, you look like a prince. That was the only approval I needed. Near the end of the night, Thomas tapped his glass. He gave a brief speech about partnership and loyalty. Then he surprised everyone. I've recently decided to invest in a new project, he said. A community initiative focused on supporting single parents in this city. Murmurs spread across the ballroom, and I've asked someone very special to help me lead it. He looked at me. Ethan has agreed to head this foundation. The room erupted in applause. I stood frozen. This wasn't planned, but when I looked at Lily, her eyes shining with pride, I knew something had shifted. Not my bank account. My identity. After the wedding, Clara approached me one last time. You've changed, she said quietly. I shook my head. No. I finally realized I didn't need to. She looked at Lily, laughing with guests. I didn't think you'd succeed. Her honesty was raw. I smiled gently. Success isn't what you think it is. A year later, the Hale Foundation for Single Families was thriving. We helped hundreds of parents find jobs, childcare, and housing. I still lived modestly, but I walked taller, not because I stood next to a millionaire that night, but because I stood next to my daughter without shame. Clara's wedding became just another memory, not a battlefield, not a victory, just a turning point. Sometimes life invites you to your own humiliation, but you don't have to attend as the person they expect. You can show up as who you become, and sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't wealth. It's growth, because in the end, I didn't show up with a millionaire, I showed up with integrity, and that was worth more than anything money could buy.